Hey guys, what's going on? Steven back again, and I'm back with another Walking Dead video from the Thrifty Typewriter. I really enjoy his videos, and the topics he covers are very interesting, like the video I'm about to watch now, which is called How Days Gone By Was the Perfect Pilot for The Walking Dead. It's been a long time since I've seen the pilot for The Walking Dead, but how was it the perfect pilot is the big question. If I had to guess, I'd probably say, maybe because the episode felt so, like we weren't overloaded. Like it was a very minimal episode. Like we didn't have so many different characters. You know, we had like, what, 3, 4 maybe. What, Rick, Morgan, Dwayne, Shane. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't even know if you really want to... Yeah, I guess you can count Shane. Even though he wasn't really in the episode for that long, he was in it for what, maybe 5 minutes at most, if I remember correctly. They were sitting in the cop car eating. They get the call on the radio. We have the police chase. Then we have the shootout. And Rick gets shot twice. Yeah, and then I think that was the end of Shane. We didn't see him again in the rest of the episode. So I mean, we had very few characters to start with. We weren't overloaded with a whole bunch of characters, like meet this person and this one and this one and this one and this one, you know. It was just very few. Same thing with the walkers. You know, we had Rick waking up in the hospital. You saw what, like a nurse or a doctor just kind of like torn in half in the hallway as he's getting ready to leave. We had the Don't Dead open inside door with the fingers and stuff like that. What else did we have? We had a bicycle walker, teddy bear walker. So I mean, it was very minimal at first, you know, unlike him being in a hospital in Atlanta, and then when he leaves, you know, hordes and swarms of walkers everywhere. No, they kept it small, but then it grew, and then you have this character who has no idea what is going on, and then you got other characters, Morgan and Dwayne, that know what's going on. So I don't know, I mean, that probably makes it sound good. And then of course at the end of the episode we got Rick riding in on a horse into Atlanta, you know, because maybe before, after he got out of the hospital, okay, what's going on here? You know, this is kind of weird. Maybe this is just an isolated incident, you know, maybe to this little area that I'm in. But then when he rides into Atlanta on the horse, it takes that turn down that street, and all those walkers are there, that's when we get the introduction. This is the world. Maybe that's when Rick realizes, okay, this is something big. You know, this is something much bigger. This isn't just a little isolated thing. Look at the city of Atlanta now. I don't know. That's my guess how Days Gone By was the perfect pilot for The Walking Dead. Started small and then just built all the way up. That's my guess, but let's find out what Thrifty Typewriter says. So, here we go.
While we're waiting on the last few episodes of The Walking Dead to hit our screens, it's hard not to imagine all the great highlights and moments that we've seen over the years. I've covered a few episodes that I consider to be highlights, and there's a lot more to come, don't get me wrong, but given that we're almost
I'll have to check out some of those other videos.
Episode of The Walking Dead, I think that it's only fitting that we take a look back at the episode that started it all, Days Gone By. Days Gone By is not only one of the best episodes of The Walking Dead, but it's one of the greatest pilot episodes of all time. It sets up the characters and our world perfectly and sets the tone for the season and the series to come. So wake up from your coma, find a weapon, and journey into the zombie apocalypse with a look back at how many days have gone by. At the start of the episode, we see an empty road with a police car driving down it. We quickly see that the apocalypse has already begun.
Teddy bear girl.
Cars that have been broken down and flipped over as we look at our very scared officer peeking around every corner looking for gas. While he thinks he sees a survivor and calls out, he finds that this little girl is actually a walker. The officer has to put her down, and we see, for the first time, the opening credits and the theme song of The Walking Dead.
Yep.
Flashing back, we see this same officer and his friend, both of them police officers, having a casual conversation about the difference between men and women. The second officer doesn't exactly seem to be very friendly towards women, but the first officer is married and seemingly going through a bit of a rough spot in his marriage. The conversation is interrupted when a call comes through the radio about a car on the run, so the officers go to intercept, leading to a shootout
the police
in which
chase
our
shootout.
officer, Rick Grimes, gets shot.
Yep.
The officer is taken to the hospital, seeing glimpses of his friend Shane, the other officer, coming in to visit. Rick responds with a joke, but very quickly realizes that a long time has passed when he looks at the flowers that Shane
And they're all
brought
dead.
him. Rick calls for a nurse, but no one comes, leading him to get up by himself.
Mm-hmm.
He sees that the hospital is in no working condition, and
Yep.
something very bad has happened here. He sees a door that's locked and says, "Don't dead, open inside." Or "Don't open dead inside." I'm still not really sure. Rick goes outside,
Never understood
seeing that
that.
he's woken up in a nightmare. The world is not at all what it used to be, and it's broken and dying. He finds out that this is very literal.
I mean, can you just imagine waking up from a coma and just seeing the world like this? That's gotta be insane.
When he sees half of a rotting dead person that's
Yep.
somehow still
Bicycle
alive.
walker.
So he steals their bike, as you do, and rides it to his house to find his wife and son, but they're
Missing.
both gone. He chalks all of this up as a nightmare, begging to just wake up. He goes outside, promptly gets hit
Bam.
by a shovel, and taken to a different house by a guy and his son. This guy's name is Morgan, who helps him by changing his bandage, but also isn't very trusting. Morgan asks if Rick was bit, and Rick is very confused by this line of questioning.
Yep.
Morgan invites Rick to dinner and quickly realizes that Rick doesn't know what's going on outside. Morgan explains to Rick what the world has actually come to, and
This is the
Rick
new
thinks
world
that
now.
This guy is certifiably insane, though he eventually comes to see that Morgan is right and the dead do walk the earth.
Yep.
Morgan's wife and Dwayne's mother is one of the walkers outside, and she tries to open the door to the inside. The next day, Morgan takes Rick out to train, Rick still being a bit uneasy about killing these people. Rick takes Morgan to his house, telling him that he knows Lori and Carl are still alive because of the clothes they took and the pictures off the wall.
That's
Dwayne
the
says
power
he
of
thinks that
Detective
Lori and
Grimes.
Carl are probably in Atlanta, which is an apparent safe haven. Rick then takes Morgan and Dwayne to the sheriff's station, where they can shower and clean themselves for probably the first time since the apocalypse started. Rick and Morgan talk about their plans going forward, Rick saying that he has to go to Atlanta to find Lori and
That's why
Carl,
Morgan
but
needs to
Morgan says
reunite
that
with
he's
Rick
got
once
some
again.
things to take care of, especially now that they have some guns to train with. So Rick heads to Atlanta while Morgan and Dwayne head back to their house. Morgan heads upstairs, taking out the walkers one by one with his newly acquired rifle, looking to put his wife down once and for all. He spots her,
But
he
he
can't
couldn't.
quite force himself to pull the trigger. As Rick heads to Atlanta, he broadcasts to emergency channels, asking for anybody to respond, and a group of survivors holding out just outside of Atlanta
Oh,
try to
right,
respond,
right,
but
okay.
can't quite reach him. Among this group of survivors is Shane.
Okay, so we
Lori,
do-
and
okay.
Carl. We see that Shane and Lori have grown quite a bit closer since
I
Rick
thought
has
this was-
gone.
that was in
The
episode
survivors
2.
all talk about how dangerous Atlanta is and how they should put up signs warning people to stay away because they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. Rick continues his search for gas as he stumbles across a farm. He sees inside that the family ended their own lives, but he finds a horse that he can ride into Atlanta. So he continues along, showing us the iconic shot
Yep,
of
the
Rick
famous
riding
shot.
alone into the city. A ways into the city, there seems to be no signs of life anywhere, but he continues along until something very strange catches his ear.
Yep,
A
the helicopter.
He tries to follow the sound, turning a corner and seeing dozens, if not hundreds, of walkers.
And then that's when he is really
start running
introduced
towards Rick,
into
and
the world.
Yes, I mean running. As he's escaping, there only seems to be more walkers surrounding him, so he falls off his horse, crawling under a tank, and right as he's about to end it all, he finds that the door underneath the tank is open. So
I still
he
find
opts
that
for
scene
exit
funny.
Instead. Inside the tank, Rick has
He's
to
got the
put
gun
down
right to
the
his head, and he's
insane
just like,
jump,
"Oh."
basically blowing his eardrums in the process, and as he seemingly sees no escape, a voice comes in over the radio.
Glenn.
The voice of everyone's favorite pizza delivery boy, Glenn. We see how utterly surrounded
Hey,
Rick
dumbass.
is, and the episode ends. So Days Gone By is a reference to the very first issue of the comics by the same name. I won't go into how faithful or unfaithful this episode is to the comic issue. If you're looking for a video like that, I would highly recommend going to Kuroto's Mystery Shack, where he has an ongoing series comparing the show to the comics and how faithful it really is or isn't. This series is fantastic, and I would highly recommend it. But this episode does everything
have to
that
check
a
those
pilot
videos
episode
out.
of a TV show should do. The opening scene sets up a brutal and ruthless apocalyptic world. Not only is Rick searching for gas that he can't find, but he sees a little girl, calling out to her, hoping to save her, only to see that she's been turned and he has to put her down. Not a ton of shows open with a protagonist killing a little girl, and this episode uses this scene to show us the type of world that we're now
Welcome
living
to the
when Rick wakes in this apocalyptic
brutal reality
world,
of The Walking
he
Dead.
quite literally thinks that it's just a nightmare, and this is really just the start of Andrew Lincoln's phenomenal performances that would go on to show us why he was absolutely perfect for this role. When he meets Morgan and we get the explanation of the apocalypse and how Morgan calls them walkers, this scene is just perfectly explained and acted on Lenny James's part. It's easy to see why Morgan became such a fan favorite just off of this one episode that he was in. Morgan also has his own story arc through this single episode. He explains the apocalypse to someone who doesn't really know what it is and the rules that he has to follow in order to survive, but Morgan realizes by explaining the apocalypse,
Yeah,
he's
would've
breaking his
Morgan,
own
Rick
rules
would've
by
been-
keeping his wife alive
I don't
as a
know.
walker. He also sees what it does to Dwayne and knows that he needs to take care of it for himself and for Dwayne. When Rick takes him to the weapon locker, Dwayne asks if he can learn to shoot, which Morgan agrees to, and Rick says that the gun isn't a toy, and when you pull that trigger, you have to mean it. When Morgan's upstairs taking out walkers with the rifle, he has his wife lined up in his sights, but Rick's words come back into his mind, and Morgan finds that he really doesn't mean it enough to pull the trigger. This also shows us not only what kind of world
Which
that
comes
we're
back
in,
to,
but what
unfortunately,
kind of
bite Morgan in the
characters we're
ass.
dealing with. Would it bring closure to the audience if he pulled that trigger? Sure it would, but for Morgan, it's a completely different affair. Him not being able to pull the trigger shows us that we're dealing with real people in this apocalypse, and this isn't just a show about survival. There's human emotions that go into the thought process of our characters, and that's truly what The Walking Dead is all about. Real people going through the apocalypse, not just survivors making every smart and good decision. But of course, this episode also deals with things that are actually still very present and where The Walking Dead is currently at. In this episode, we see that Morgan's wife can actually twist the doorknob and has some sort of recollection of her previous life. We
Yep.
also see walkers running after Rick in Atlanta, and this hasn't been
Which-
the case for about 10 seasons of The Walking
Yeah, that
Dead.
didn't last
However,
long.
in one of Season 11's most recent episodes called Variant,
Yeah, then
we
they
see
brought
that
it
smart
back.
walkers are a very real thing. And in The Walking Dead World Beyond, we also see that running zombies are also present. This begs the question of what the future of these walker variants are going to have on the spin-off shows after Season 11. Of course, these walkers in this episode were not meant to be walker variants. It was very much due to the showrunner at the time, Frank
Yep.
Darabont. But even if these decisions are being retconned to mean something more, I'm okay with that because it makes the universe feel that much more connected. There's also the case
Kinda wish
of
they
Rick
brought the
seeing
variant walkers in a
helicopter
little
Atlanta,
bit earlier.
A recurring theme that we would see time and time again, ultimately leading to Rick's departure from the show in a helicopter. I know we've gotten the answer as to who was in this helicopter, but there's also no concrete evidence that this wasn't a CRM helicopter. This would of course be a
True.
retcon to the series, but if they're already retconning Walker variants, why not make this one a CRM helicopter too? At the end of this episode, we get a song that would
They
eventually
could.
go on to play during Rick's departure from the show as well, which is a cool callback to the start of Rick's journey and also the end of it in the proper Walking Dead show. Overall, this
Oh,
episode was a
yeah.
perfect start to
I
the
forgot the name of the
series as a
song.
whole. It sets up the world and the character drama that would follow as a result of the events in this episode. With
Yep.
The Walking Dead coming to an end, I can't wait to see the start of Rick Grimes' new journey in his own show with Michonne, and I imagine that we'll be getting a lot of callbacks to this episode when we see the first episode of the Rick and Michonne show in 2023. Hopefully we'll get an actual
So
name
much
for
for
that
that,
show soon because I
2023.
can't keep on saying the Rick and Michonne show. Let me know your thoughts on Days Gone By in the comments below and which episode you want me to cover next. If you're not already, remember to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. If you do, then I'll see you in the next one.
Okay, so there we go. There's how Days Gone By was the perfect pilot for The Walking Dead. So yeah, just like I thought, human emotions, minimal characters. You know, we weren't overloaded with too much. Although I did forget about that scene when, you know, he was calling on the radio and stuff like that, and we did see, you know, the rest of the group. For some reason, I thought that was episode 2. But I mean, even then, I think it was a very... I think it wasn't even for that long that we saw all the other survivors and stuff. See, I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it, but, you know, it's not like they were on screen the whole episode. So, yeah, you know, just showing Rick waking up, not knowing what's going on, introducing him into this new brutal, violent world. Morgan telling Rick what's going on. This is how you gotta survive and stuff like that. But yeah, I totally agree with a lot of things definitely said in this video. I mean, that's how, yeah, this was a really good pilot episode for The Walking Dead, introducing us into the world and kind of what to expect. And hey, this isn't, you know, this is going to be a very unpleasant world, you know, shooting and killing a Walker child, you know. I mean, starting out a show with like that, the only other show I can really compare something like that to, with like a shocking moment like that, would be if you've ever seen the show The Shield, not what is it, Agents of the Shield or something like that, or S.H.I Shield, but The Shield, the cop show. At the end of episode 1, that there was another, like, whoa, so this is the type of world we're getting into in this show. Okay, I don't want to spoil anything, in case if you guys haven't seen that show, but definitely go check out that show. I think it was like 2002, I think is when it came out. But yeah, go and watch that show. And the end of the first episode was just as like, okay, this is the world we're getting into. Just like The Walking Dead, when he shot and killed, you know, that little child Walker. It's like, okay, this is not going to be a pleasant world, a pleasant universe, whatever you want to call it. We're going to be shooting and killing Walker children, you know. So yeah, it was a very good pilot episode, I will say that. But yeah, I'll definitely have to go back and rewatch, you know, the show again, at least some of the first earlier seasons and stuff, since it's been so long since I've seen them. But it just still feels like I just finished watching, you know, the show, even though with all these different spin-offs, it still feels like, you know, oh, I just watched, you know, Dead City and stuff, and I just saw Maggie and Negan, you know, and they were just on The Walking Dead and stuff like that. I just saw Daryl and, you know, his spin-off, and I just saw him in season 11 and stuff. So it still kind of feels like The Walking Dead, the show, just hasn't ended, because it's like I'm still seeing like all these different characters everywhere, you know, unlike another show where, you know, like a Netflix show where I can just binge watch, you know, the whole season first week or something like that after it comes out, you know, and that show doesn't have any spin-offs or anything like that. So it's like, cool, I watched the show right when it came out. Cool, now I got like a year until the next season comes out. By the time the next season comes out, I go back and rewatch the first one. It's like, okay, what happened? I don't remember what happened and stuff like that, because it's been, you know, like a year. But now with all these different spin-offs, it's like, well, you know, I just saw these characters here, I just saw this character here and stuff. It still feels fresh, you know. I don't know, it just feels, it just feels weird, funny, I guess. But yeah, so anyways, there we go. There is the video. How Days Gone By was the perfect pilot for The Walking Dead. I'll definitely have to check out maybe some of those other videos that he showed that different channel for, comparing the show to the comics, because that sounds very interesting. I'd like to see how faithful the show was to the comics. I'm sure like they were pretty faithful in a lot of things, and then other things probably not so much, because I think what was it? I think it was Greg Nicotero said they didn't want to do an exact copy of the comics, because then, you know, it kind of takes away, because then you can just like, oh, look at the comics and, oh, okay, so that's coming up. Okay, so that's going to happen. Okay, so they're going to do this. And now you kind of know, all right, well, in episode 3, you know, this is going to happen. Episode 4, this character is going to die. Episode 5, okay, that's going to happen. You know, they just didn't want to do that. They wanted to, you know, surprise, which is fair enough. I mean, that would kind of suck if you just, you know, hey, by the way, episode 6, this character is going to get bitten and die because, see, happens right here in the comics. You know, it's just like, you know, kind of it spoils it. So I kind of understand, but I'm sure they kept the liberty on like a lot of major events and stuff like that. They kept that as close as they could to the comics. But I'll definitely have to check out those videos because I'm curious about those. But other than that, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. That'd be awesome. Remember, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media. Links in the description box below. Come and join me over on Discord. We can talk more Walking Dead and stuff like that. I have been posting filming pictures, you know, for Daryl Season 2 and stuff like that. I posted some pictures of the Rick and Michonne spinoff. And I'm sure I'll post some when Dead City starts filming sometime next year. So yeah, we can, you know, talk more Walking Dead and stuff like that, and you know, just chat. So other than that, yeah, just stick around. More videos are on the way, and I will see you guys next time.